Good morning, friends. So, today's lecture is about acid-base disorders. Now, in the last lecture, we talked about renal mechanism and respiratory mechanism of acid-base balance and pH, and we also learned about which are the parameters that are available in the arterial blood gas analysis, and what are the precautions that should be taken for arterial blood gas analysis of a patient sample. So, continuing from the previous lecture, today we will see which are disorders related to abnormality in acid and base balance. So, they are classified under two headings, mainly acidosis, where the blood pH falls less than 7.35, and another one is alkalosis, where blood pH rises more than 7.45. Now, acidosis could be either due to decrease in bicarbonate ion concentration, that is metabolic acidosis, or it could be due to increase in partial pressure of carbon dioxide or retention of CO2, which ultimately leads to increased H2CO3. So that is called respiratory acidosis. Whereas in alkalosis, your blood pH is more than 7.45. Again, it is subclassified. It could be either metabolic alkalosis, where plasma bicarbonate concentration is high, or it could be respiratory alkalosis, where partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low. So ultimately your H2CO3 is low. So this is a basic classification of acid-base disorders. We will see in detail about each one. So acidosis or alkalosis, when it is produced inside our body, there is one or the other type of compensation if it gets prolonged. Compensation is produced by either renal system or your respiratory system. So this compensation in existing acid-base disturbance produces mixed acid-base disturbance. We'll understand that. So it could be, so your acid-base disorders could be either they are uncompensated, they are partially compensated, or they are fully compensated. In both of the previous uncompensated and partially compensated, still the compensatory mechanism is not able to restore the body pH towards normal side, whereas in fully compensated state, your blood pH is restored to normal. We'll understand. So if you take an example of, say, metabolic acidosis, so basically pH is decreased due to deficit of bicarbonate ions. Your bicarbonate to carbonic acid ratio is less than 20, normal is 20:1. Okay. Now, what type of compensation happens here? So the body will try to wash out try to nullify excess of H2CO3 by washing out of respiratory CO2. So there is a secondary change. The compensation is brought about by the respiratory system. It will hyperventilate and it will decrease partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Similarly, in alkalosis, your respiratory system will lead to retention of carbon dioxide. Likewise, for respiratory acidosis, your pH decreased due to retention of CO2, which ultimately leads to excess of H2CO3. Your ratio is decreased, and here your renal system will come into picture for compensation, and it will try to retain HCO3 or bicarbonate ions and thereby try to restore the pH. Conversely, in alkalosis, your renal system on compensation will decrease retention of bicarbonate ions. So this is how your uncompensated, partially compensated and fully compensated acid-base disorder works. So now going into the details of each type of acidosis and alkalosis. Before that, we must understand about anion gap. Anion gap is an important tool to differentiate various types of acidosis. We will see later on. So what is an anion gap? Now normally in your plasma or blood, the cation is contributed by sodium and potassium, which almost contributes to 95% of cation. Only 5% of cation is contributed by calcium, magnesium and your positive charged particles. So 95% is contributed by sodium and potassium, whereas anions, they are contributed by majority of chloride and bicarbonate ions, but it contributes only to 85% of anions. Okay, you can see there is a 10% difference. You can say cation, sodium, potassium, they are almost representative of all cations, whereas chloride and bicarbonate, you cannot say they are almost representative of all anions because it only contributes to 85% of anions comparatively. Now in plasma or in extracellular fluid, the sum of cations should be equal to the sum of anions. So your Na plus K should be equal to chloride plus bicarbonate. So what is anion gap? The anion gap is the difference between measured cations and measured anions. As I told you earlier, it is mainly due to unmeasured anion because your sum of anion represents only 85% of anions. What about remaining 15%? Those are unmeasured anions. Okay, compared to only 5% of the cations which are unmeasured. Okay, so which are the unmeasured anions? They are protein, sulfate, phosphates and various organic acids. They are unmeasured anions. So what is your normal anion gap? It is usually 12 plus or minus 5 millimoles per liter, means ranges from 7 millimole per liter to 17 millimole per liter normal. So you can easily say when the concentration of all these unmeasured anion varies, your anion gap will also vary. In the sense, if concentration of unmeasured anion increases, your anion gap will increase. Right? That has a clinical significance that we see in types of acidosis. So I think by now we are almost clear about concept of anion gap. So now coming on to acidosis, your blood pH less than 7.35. I have just put a compare and contrast of both the types of acidosis. One is metabolic acidosis and another is respiratory acidosis. So understanding is better. So whenever there is acidosis, first thing we look is fall in pH. Now to determine whether it is due to metabolic abnormality or respiratory, we focus on plasma bicarbonate ions. If it is less, it is metabolic component. If your CO2 or PCO2 is high or carbonic acid, resultant carbonic acid is high, then it is due to respiratory component or respiratory acidosis. So in metabolic acidosis, your ratio of bicarb is to carbonic acid decreases 20:1, so your low pH. Now this happens in uncompensated phase where your HCO3 is low and ultimately your ratio is low. Now what happens after compensation? Ultimately your ratio is restored to normal, where body will try to decrease the partial pressure of CO2. Since chemoreceptors are activated, it will lead to your respiratory system will undergo hyperventilation and will try to wash off excess of CO2, which ultimately decreases your H2CO3 concentration, the acid one. Again, your bicarbonate is already low, but body is decreasing this component, acid component of the buffer, and try to maintain the ratio 20:1. Okay, so this happens in fully compensated phase. Your total CO2 will be low, so that the ratio is maintained. Now, which are the compensatory mechanisms we have available? So in metabolic acidosis, primary mechanism to compensate is respiratory, that I told you via hyperventilation. So PCO2 low and thereby concentration of H2CO3. Now, over and above primary, there comes your renal system also to play its role in compensation. So since we are already having high amount of acid, what your renal system will try to compensate? It will try to conserve base. So it will try to excrete more H ions and try to reabsorb HCO3. So your NaH exchange is increased. H ion will be lost more. HCO3 reclamation is increased, so HCO3 reabsorption is more, and I told you earlier that ammonia formation leads to excretion of acid via NH4 ion or NH4Cl. So formation of ammonia is increased. So glutaminase activity is increased in acidosis. So if you observe what happens to urine, various parameters in the urine. So since the renal mechanism trying to excrete acid, your pH of urine will be acidic in the compensatory phase. Again, if you observe the titrable acid and your ammonium chloride, both of them will be high. So increased acid excretion represented by NH4Cl and titrable acid, sodium hydrogen phosphate. So both of these will be excreted because we are already having acidosis. So we will try to excrete extra H ions via NH4Cl and sodium dihydrogen phosphate formation. So increase in titrable acidity. Now this brings us to the various causes which leads to metabolic acidosis. Now simply you can classify under three causes. One, either there is excess production of acid inside our body that can lead to acidosis. Second, there is increased loss of bicarbonate from our body, that is also there, which can lead to acidosis. And the third, either it can be via GI system or renal system, excessive loss of HCO3 ions. Okay. So now understanding this concept, we'll try to see various causes of acidosis. So again, acidosis, various conditions which increases the production of acid, they are diabetic ketoacidosis, high grade fever, lactic acidosis due to any cause, okay, renal insufficiency, in which there is a failure to excrete acid. Okay. So these are the various causes which leads to increased acid production, and your all of HCO3 are neutralizing these acids. Another thing is abnormal loss of bicarbonate ions. You can see that your conditions such as diarrhea and intestinal fistula, in all these conditions your bicarbonate rich fluid is lost from the intestine. Your pancreatic juice majority of contains HCO3. Along with that, in diarrhea and fistula you also lost sodium and potassium. Okay. Now, the acidosis, metabolic acidosis, is classified based on anion gap. It is classified into two types: normal anion gap, where it is restored between 7 to 17 millimole per liter. Now, why there is normal anion gap? So we learned that anion gap is your sum total of Na plus K is equal to chloride minus HCO3. Now, in spite of having acidosis, this anion gap might be normal. So either there could be increase, there is a balance in loss of Na and K and chloride and bicarbonate, which happens in various causes which leads to normal anion gap acidosis. So those causes are diarrhea and fistula. Okay. Now what happens in diarrhea, fistula? Along with your bicarbonate in the stool, you are also losing your sodium and potassium. So again, the gap is maintained. Right? Both NaK and HCO3 are lost. Now in this type of condition, there is always a resultant hyperchloramia, because body will try to maintain electric neutrality since HCO3 are getting lost. So at kidney level, your chloride will be reabsorbed. So often they are also called hyperchloremic acidosis, normal anion gap acidosis. Now, this normal anion gap acidosis, they are classified based on serum potassium levels. They are the way normal anion gap acidosis associated with low serum potassium. These are diarrhea, intestinal fistula. Your renal tubular acidosis type 1, where there is a distal tubular defect, and type 2, there is proximal tubular defect. What happens in type 2? There is loss of HCO3 retention. Okay. And type 1, there is loss of capacity of tubule to excrete H ions. Okay. So here your HCO3 are not getting reabsorbed, and in distal tubular acidosis, your H ions are not getting excreted. Both of these conditions will lead to acidosis. Now, since in type 1 your H ion is not getting excreted, instead of H ion, your K plus 1 will get excreted and your sodium will be reabsorbed. Okay. Again, in ureteric transplantation, same thing will happen. Now, acetazolamide is a carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. You can say acetazolamide is nothing but it is a type 2 renal tubular acidosis which has been induced pharmacologically. What does it do? It inhibits formation of, it inhibits carbonic anhydrase enzyme. So your out of H2CO3, your H ion and bicarbs will not form. Okay, so your bicarbonate will be less if you give acetazolamide drug. It is used in various type of ocular disorders, that is glaucoma, intraocular pressure is high. It is used as a diuretic, mild diuretic, but the thing is, it is associated with acidosis, normal anion gap acidosis, and hypokalemia. There will be low serum potassium levels. Again, the serum potassium, I told you that HCO3 are not getting reabsorbed, it will be produced to the distal tubule where sodium will be reabsorbed and your potassium will be excreted. And normal anion gap with high plasma potassium level is hyperkalemic normal anion gap acidosis. It occurs in type 4 renal tubular acidosis. Now, type 4 renal tubular acidosis is due to hypoaldosteronism, where your body is not, your kidneys are not able to produce renin. If renin is produced, failure to secrete aldosterone from the renal cortex. If aldosterone is secreted, it may not able to act on the receptor in the renal tubule. So this is type 4 renal tubular acidosis. Now what it leads to is increased wasting of sodium at the distal tubule. Now what happens here is your sodium will be lost in excess and it will not be reabsorbed at the distal tubule. So what will happen? Your K plus 1 and H plus 1 will be retained. So there is hyperkalemia and acidosis. Okay. Normally sodium is reabsorbed first in place of H ion. Then when H ions are depleted, sodium will be reabsorbed against K plus 1. Okay. Since that is not happening, so Na is getting lost, your K plus 1 and H plus 1 are getting retained. So acidosis and hyperkalemia. So this is all about normal anion gap acidosis. The other type is high anion gap acidosis. The mnemonic you can remember, that is mud piles. We'll see basic defect in high anion gap acidosis is increased organic acid production. So we'll see high anion gap acidosis. M stands for methanol poisoning, which produces excessive amount of formic acid. Then U is uremia of renal failure, where body is not able to excrete organic acid, so it leads to accumulation of acid. Or there can be also defect in tubules, where body is not able to excrete enzymes. D stands for diabetic ketoacidosis, various ketoacids are there. Paraldehyde toxicity, P stands for, again paraldehyde leads to increased beta hydroxybutyrate. I stands for ischemia, iron or isoniazid toxicity. Now iron and isoniazid both are mitochondrial poisons. It affects mitochondrial, it causes mitochondrial toxicity, and we all know mitochondria is responsible for aerobic processes. So aerobic processes affected means your anaerobic activity will be increased, so your lactate will be high. Again in ischemia we all know there is high lactate due to lack of O2. Either it could be, it is mainly due to loss of blood flow to the tissue. L stands for lactic acidosis, again frank lactic acidosis, either due to metabolic disorders or severe exercise. Ethylene glycol poisoning, it is present in antifreeze solution. So main acid which is produced by ethylene glycol metabolism, glycolic acid. So high glycolic acid, it is also associated with renal stone because high glycolate production. Oxalate will be produced, which produces renal stone. And the last one, S, stands for salicylate poisoning. Salicylate itself acts as acid, organic acid. Okay, so all these things increases unmeasured anion and it leads to high anion gap acidosis. So mnemonic, you remember mud pies, methanol poisoning, uremia, vinylphylate, decay, diabetic ketoacidosis, paraldehyde toxicity, ischemia, INS toxicity, lactic acidosis, glycol poison, and salicylate poison. Okay, so this is all about your metabolic acidosis. What happens in metabolic acidosis, which are the various compensatory mechanisms, and which are the biochemical findings present in urine, and which are the causes of acidosis. May it be high anion gap or normal anion gap. Okay, so now we'll see, in contrast to metabolic acidosis, we'll study respiratory acidosis. What is respiratory acidosis? So primary, the pH is low, again pH is low, but your carbonic acid is high. Now why carbonic acid is high? It is due to increased retention of carbon dioxide, which ultimately forms H2CO3. So again the ratio will be low, and that's why pH will be low. So in uncompensated phase, you'll see a picture of high partial pressure of CO2, okay, compared to your HCO3. So disproportionate rise in H2CO3, which leads to decrease in the ratio. Whereas in fully compensated phase, the ratio will be retained normal, along with high HCO3 against high H2CO3. So your ratio is maintained 20:1 and your pH will be restored. Now what type of compensation occurs here? So primarily when there is respiratory acidosis, your renal system comes to rescue. What it does is it increases NaH exchange, okay, H1 will be created, NaHCO3 will be absorbed more, so NaH exchange, more reclamation of HCO3 ions, yeah. So we are increasing the numerator via compensation, and we are also decreasing the H ions, acid. So there is also increased ammonia formation and acid excretion. Now which is the secondary compensatory mechanism which can be observed? Respiratory. Since this respiratory acidosis is only due to respiratory condition, your secondary respiratory only acts partially. What it tries to do is it will try to wash out CO2, but the pathogenesis itself involves in lung disorders. There won't be total compensation contribution by respiratory system. So it will try to induce hyperventilation, but the response will only be partial because it involves your lung disorders and respiratory center problems. Now, after seeing this compensation, what do you feel your urinary findings will be? So, renal mechanism trying to excrete acid out of body, so pH will be acidic, and you will increase excretion of ammonium chloride and titrable acid, sodium dihydrogen phosphate. It is seen as a result of compensation by kidney. So these are your urinary findings. Now coming on to the causes of respiratory acidosis. Anything which leads to decrease in respiration, may it be right at the level of CNS, right at the level of respiration itself, ventilatory function, or your ventilation is proper but there is defect at the level of alveolar membrane, your alveolar respiratory function, or simply there is obstruction of respiration or abnormality in pulmonary blood flow. So which are the CNS causes which leads to decrease in respiration, which leads to retention of CO2. So head injury, trauma, inflammation, compression, convulsion, anything. Drug poisoning which decreases CNS activity, your morphine, barbiturates, excessive overzealous use of anesthesia, general anesthesia, and polio. Polio is leads to decrease in respiratory muscle activity. Then there is a loss of ventilatory function of chest. So it could be due to high intrathoracic pressure or atelectasis, loss of elasticity of lungs. So pneumothorax, mediastinal tumors, emphysema, all these comes under your respiratory causes. Even excessive pain leads to decrease in respiration because due to respiration there will be more pain. Now, if above these two are normal, there could be a defect in the level of alveolar air interface. Okay, so there is loss in respiratory surface which leads to exchange of O2, CO2, so emphysema, pneumonia, fibrosis, pulmonary edema. Okay, if the exchange is proper, there is an obstruction in the tract, so it obstructs the escape of CO2. So there will be obstructive disorders, your asthma and all, or your rebreathing in a closed space where already CO2 is there, you are again exchanging CO2 or inspirating CO2. And conditions where everything is normal but pulmonary blood flow which carries the deoxygenated blood is insufficient. Those are formed in congenital heart disease. So these are the various causes which lead to respiratory acidosis. Okay. So that was all about metabolic acidosis and respiratory acidosis. Compare and contrast what happens in your carbonic acid bicarbonate ratio, which are the compensatory mechanism, which are the biochemical findings, and which are the causes that leads to particular type of acidosis. Now moving on to alkalosis. Now what is alkalosis? Plasma or blood pH is more than 7.45. Again, the two types. If it is due to excess of HCO3, it is metabolic alkalosis. If it is due to deficit of H2CO3 acidic component, it is respiratory alkalosis. Now plasma bicarb high, so obviously in metabolic alkalosis your ratio of buffer will be high, more than 20, so your pH is high. That is seen in your uncompensated phase, the disproportionate rise in HCO3 ions. Okay. Again, it also leads to increase total CO2 and H2CO3, but the rise in H2CO3 is very high compared to H2CO3. That's why it is called disproportionate rise. Now what happens in compensation? Since your bicarbonate concentration is high, body will try to increase H2CO3. How H2CO3 is formed from CO2 and water, so body will try to retain carbon dioxide, or it will take the measure to increase the partial pressure of CO2 in the body. So there will be hypoventilation, decrease in respiration, and hypoventilation leading to retention of CO2, and it will try to compensate and will bring the ratio towards 20 and restore the pH to normal. Which are the secondary mechanisms which are observed in metabolic alkalosis for compensation. Now what will renal system do here? it will try to excrete HCO3 and it will try to retain H ion. So there is low NaH exchange in the distal tubule, right? So H plus 1 will be retained, NaHCO3 will be excreted. We are not excreting acid in case of metabolic alkalosis, so the ammonia formation will be low. So low acid excretion. Reclamation of bicarbonate shall be also low, because we don't want any more bicarbonate. We are already having sufficient or more than sufficient amount. So body will try to decrease the reabsorption of bicarbonate ions. Again, resulting there will be K plus 1 excretion. Since HCO3 is going out, so chloride will be retained to maintain the electric neutrality. Now, what are the urinary findings or biochemical findings in metabolic alkalosis? So, if you observe the pH of the urine, we are excreting alkali, so there is alkaline urine. Your urinary ammonia will be low, NH4Cl will be low, and decrease in titrable acidity compared to metabolic acidosis, where all of these are reverse and pH is acidic. Which are the other findings which will be there? So in alkalosis, there will be due to pH of the body is alkaline in nature, it will have impact on your plasma proteins. We all know that the alkaline condition, all your plasma protein will be more negatively charged. So what will happen? They will chelate, or more of alkali negative proteins will trap ionized calcium or free calcium part. So we all know it leads to tetany. Again, your alkalemia, you are trying to conserve acid via kidney. So what will happen at the distal tubule? Body will try to exchange sodium in place of potassium. So there will be hypokalemia. Also, inside the cells, the KH exchange will occur in compensation from the cells. So what will happen? Your K plus 1 will go inside the cell in alkalosis, and H plus 1 will come outside the cell. So there will be hypokalemia. Okay. If there is involvement of kidney, there will be nitrogen retention and oligurias may also occur. Now, which are the causes which leads to alkalosis? It could be either due to excessive acid excretion from our body. We know that the acid produced in the stomach is HCl. So any process with the throwing out of HCl leads to alkalosis. So excessive vomiting, gastric lavage, prolonged gastric lavage. Pyloric obstruction again leads to vomiting. High intestinal obstruction, before your pancreatic juice is added into the GI system, if there is any obstruction, that is called high intestinal obstruction, also leads to excretion of hydrochloric acid via vomiting. Pylorospasm and obstruction, both are same, both leads to vomiting and excretion of hydrochloric acid. Or it can be due to excess of alkali ingestion, okay, or X-ray on ultraviolet or radiation therapy possible mechanism. All these things leads to vomiting. So there is alkalosis or excretion of acid. Now, if you see metabolic alkalosis, there are two types: chloride responsive, where chloride excretion in the urine is less than 10 millimole per liter. Most of your upper GIT causes that leads to vomiting and excretion of HCl, they come under chloride responsive. It is also called as contraction alkalosis, okay, where HCl both are lost. So since chloride is getting excreted, your bicarbonate will be lost from the kidney and chloride will be retained. That's why your urinary chloride will be less than 10 millimole per liter. And the another type of alkalosis, chloride resistance, where chloride excretion is more than 10 millimole per liter, and the causes are any cause that leads to excess of mineral or glucocorticoid, which is also seen in hypertension. What happens here is mineral and glucocorticoid both has activity on the distal tubule. What it does is it leads to excess of sodium reabsorption. Along with that, your bicarb is also getting reabsorbed. So what happens here? Since your bicarbonate is getting reabsorbed, to maintain electric neutrality, your chlorine is to get excreted. So there will be high chloride in urine. Okay. And again, there is alkalosis because excess of sodium is getting reabsorbed. But in exchange of sodium, first your H ion will be excreted, and later on when H ion depletes, your K+1 will be excreted. So these are also associated with alkalosis and hypokalemia, glucocorticoid and mineralocorticoid excess. Exogenous base ingestion, this happens in your blood transfusion, which contains citrate. Citrate in the liver gets converted to your bicarbonate ions. So excess blood transfusion repetitive can also lead to metabolic alkalosis, and both of them are associated with chloride. They are chloride resistant when chloride excretion is more than 10 millimole per liter in urine. So that was all about metabolic alkalosis. What about respiratory? Again, the primary defect is H2CO3 or your PCO2 is very low. Okay, so what happens due to that? Your H2CO3 is also low because everything is in equilibrium with gaseous and dissolved CO2. So your ratio will be high, so your pH will be high. So denominator is deficit, hence your ratio is high and pH will be high. So all these causes will be more of respiratory related. So what happens in uncompensated phase? Your disproportionate fall in H2CO3. Okay. Also it leads to fall in HCO3, but the fall in H2CO3 will be very much compared to HCO3. So your ratio is more than 20:1. So your pH will be high. Now in fully compensated phase, what happens? Your ratio is ultimately restored to normal. Your bicarb will also fall further to maintain the ratio, and pH will be restored to normal. So that brings us to various compensatory mechanisms associated with respiratory alkalosis. So primary response comes from renal system. What it will try to do is it will try to excrete HCO3. It will try not to conserve HCO3. So what it does, or it will try to retain H ion. So it decreases NaH exchange, obviously. It also decreases the excretion of acid at the distal tubule. NH4Cl and NaH2PO4 will be decreased excretion. Then your HCO3 will be increased excretion. So there will be less reabsorption of HCO3 by kidney, which leads to increased HCO3 excretion. And again, there is decreased excretion of ammonia. All these, since your HCO3 is getting excreted, your chloride will be retained to maintain electric neutrality. Again, there is decreased NaH exchange. So what will happen at the level of distal tubule? In exchange of sodium, you have to retain hydrogen ions, so your potassium will get excreted. So this might be associated with hypokalemia. So secondary changes or compensation comes from respiratory, but in the cause will be respiratory itself. So these are all partial compensations from the respiratory side. So what will happen? Body will try to retain CO2 and try to restore the ratio normal and increase the H2CO3. So if you observe the urinary findings of respiratory alkalotic patients, so your pH of the urine will be alkaline. Obviously there is no reabsorption of HCO3, so HCO3 will appear in urine, so urine alkaline. Ammonia also will be less because we don't want to excrete NH4Cl, and so is your titrable acid NaH2PO4 because we want to retain acid in presence of alkali. Again, other findings will be same that of metabolic alkalosis. Since it is alkalosis, more negativity of proteins will combine with calcium ions. So low ionic calcium leads to tetany and increased neuromuscular hyperexcitability. Again, there is a hypokalemia. I told you the cause. That low NaH exchange. Your H plus 1 is retained against Na. So what will happen? Your K plus 1 will be lost. Another cause at the cellular level, since there is alkalosis, what will happen? Your K plus 1 will go inside the cell and your H plus 1 will try to compensate. It will appear in the ECF at the cellular level. So there is a hypokalemia both at the cellular level and the level of kidney. Kidney damage, that is already there, the renal damage lead to oliguria and nitrogen retention. Now, respiratory causes which leads to respiratory alkalosis are there is excessive stimulation of respiration. CNS disease like meningitis and encephalitis, they all are associated with increased respiratory hyperventilation. Also, salicylate poisoning leads to hyperventilation, and hypercatabolic state fever, hyperpyrexia, again leads to high ventilation. And the other causes are injudicious use of respirator. High altitude ascending, again high altitude ascending leads to, there is a low PO2 on the height, so what body will try to do is try to oxygenate itself, that it will produce hyperventilation, so there will be excess loss of CO2 rather than getting high PO2. So these are the various causes which are related to respiratory alkalosis. We already seen chloride resistant and chloride responsive type of metabolic alkalosis. So thank you everyone. With this we'll end the lecture series of acid-base disorders and acid-base maintenance. Thank you everyone.